Hey everybody, welcome back to Hunty's World of Pain on tour. This is Shits and Giggles Corner. We're just going to share a chess game just for the fun of doing it. This is a 5-minute blitz that I played today. I'm rated low 1500s. My opponent was rated 1583. And we get the Queen's Pawn opening. So right now I'm still playing the England Gambit, trying to go into the Charlik. And we have the England Gambit decline. Now, this is not the most accurate approach from White. White really is looking like overextending this pawn somewhat. Plus, they've moved the same pawn twice on their first two moves, which really does give away some of the advantage to black. So the computer here says that knight to f6 is the best move. I always play bishop c5. Maybe I should be playing knight f6, I don't know. With the idea of maybe closing the door on the bishop later on. And also c6 becomes a move. c6, and it's kind of causes White a problem here anyway. So now we have e4, makes perfect sense. They're trying to hold on to that somewhat overextended center. Now I develop my knight. And we have pawn to f3. Now this does of course open up a little bit of a diagonal towards the king. But their pawn is under attack on e4. I guess it would have been better maybe to defend with knight c3. Actually, the machine's saying bishop d3, then knight c3, also queen f3 are all perfectly reasonable moves. This one, not so much. This now gives black a meaningful advantage. And now I throw in c6 straight away. So got some gorgeous spring sunshine trying to creep through. Okay, and White again pushes another big pawn up the center, up into the middle. So they've got this massive wedge of pawns, and they have developed exactly pieces right now. So it's not looking great, and the computer has black at 1.4 here already. So definitely going for a lot of space, but not a lot of control. So queen b6. This is a common move in lots of lines, and lots of d4 lines as well. One major threat is just bishop to f2, forcing the king to move, but even greater is capturing the knight here. You can very often get this in the Danish gambit with White from the other side. So yeah, I've got two attackers now on that knight. It's defended only by a rook, so the rook really can't capture, or the rook gets lost as well. So not great. So they move their knight to h3. Okay, this does not feel like I'm playing somebody nearly 1600 rated at Blitz, okay? And now I push d6. The idea is, I guess, to open up this bishop, maybe even take out that knight, double up their pawns on the h-file. We have queen to e2, again, not very accurate. And the machine now says bishop takes h3 is the move. Second best is c takes d5. I eliminate the knight, they recapture with the g-pawn. And now it's really hard to say what White has got going for his position right now. And it all really comes from that second move, that advancing that pawn. Okay, so I play knight a6. It's not great. It's saying knight bd7 would have been slightly more accurate. Also castles. Knight a6, though, is the third move. That's the one I play. I'm looking at just improving my knight coming around. They push a3. And now it's with do I find bishop d4? No, I don't. Bishop d4 it's saying here was the best move. I castle. Knight comes in. And now I'm swinging my knight around here. I want to get my knight to f4, embarrass the queen, and really just try and get behind into, you see all this space that we've got here behind White's pawns. Even this square is looking really nice as well. Okay, they play knight to a4 now, hitting my queen. Okay, so what would you play here? Queen to a5 is a fork on the king and the knight. Now, it doesn't win the knight. It basically forces the knight back to c3. It's really the only move that's playable. And now again, it's saying bishop d4 is the best move. And I do find it. On this occasion, I find it. They defend with their bishop. And now in comes the knight. And suddenly all this space that White seemed to have is kind of backfiring because they're almost lacking cover. It's like their advanced troops have gone off too early, too far, and there are now enemy troops starting to infiltrate into their position. Okay, I think one threat here is even knight here and getting right into the position, supported by the other knight as well. So they are pretty much forced to take. I recapture, and now queen goes across to d2. This is a very natural looking move, just hitting the queen and also really just jamming this bishop right into white's position. So the queen's going to have to move. Queen moves here, and not fantastic because we have now knight c5. And I'm just really enjoying helping myself to these squares behind. We're hitting the queen, we're also maybe threatening b3. Okay, I dropped my queen back now. That wasn't the best move. Queen d8. All the way back to d8 was better, I guess, with the idea of coming around with a check. But I do this, I leave my rooks connected. They push on. Okay, pawn to b4. And what would you do now in this position? Okay, it's now saying just retreat the knight to d7. That is exactly what I do, right? This bishop and this pawn looking after each other beautifully here. And I mean, look at what white still hasn't developed. Both rooks and a bishop are still at home. They bring their queen in now. Obviously that walks straight into another attack by the knight. My knight wants to find another route into the position. This pawn is also hanging. So the queen really needs to come back to d1 or e2. Okay, she goes to e2. And now simply a5. I'm just starting to pull the legs off now. And in comes the queen again. Their queen comes across. And just reinforce with my other rook. And in comes the knight. Now this is all going to fall apart very quickly. Also notice that white's only got 1:13 left on the clock. I've got 2:25. Okay, so this is the check. Now the king has to move. There's no castling. Now I come in with a fork on queen and knight. Knight must take. I capture with check. It's now nearly 10 points, although I'm only 1 pawn up. Nearly -10 in black's favour. Okay, so the king here has to move. There's no... Well, I mean, I guess the queen could block here and trade off, but then that would also lose the bishop, so it doesn't work. King to here. Now my rook takes, hitting the queen, now that the king has blocked the bishop's defence of the c4 square. Queen moves across. There is now a forced mate in 7, starting with the move f3 check. Interesting. Okay, but my queen comes across now, targeting the rook on h1. Their queen comes over. I don't even have to capture the rook, because now I have rook c2 with check. Queen can't take, it's defended square. Rook comes back. Here actually it's in queen takes d5. Queen takes d5 check. Yeah, and the king can't really take here, because I guess then I come in there with check, I don't know. But there are a few mate in 5s here. Okay, so I have a check here. If the king goes to c1, it's mate in 2. King goes to e1. I grab the queen. He's down to 12 seconds now. And so it's just a case of not doing anything really stupid. Here the king is forced to cross. I just create myself a bit of luft. Come back, grab the pawn. And now check. Come back out of the way. And here we are simply... Well, threatening to come in, but he's down to 4 seconds. And the other rook is going to double up here and come in there. That would be checkmate, and opponent loses on time. So where did it go wrong? Well, I really think here. This is one of those really critical positions. Here, this is one of those gambits where white has to accept. If white takes the gambit, then white is +1 already. Notice at the start of the game, white is about half a pawn in front. Okay, if you don't accept the gambit, I mean, the second best move is e3, which is also kind of equal. Okay, knight c3 just doesn't work. Pushing the pawn is just not great. It's saying here knight to f6, but this is the move that I play. And the thing about the England gambit is that d4 players, it's very much out of their comfort zone anyway. d4 just isn't that, it's more of a kind of positional approach to the game in general. So they're not really expecting to find themselves in Gambit land. So yeah, I mean, I've got fairly decent results. Let's have a look at the chess.com Explorer. Now, the issue with chess.com Explorer, of course, is it shows you your all-time results. So from the time I first started on chess.com, so I'll go for my games as black. Okay, and X to flip the board, and after D4. So let's see what we've done. So E5. E5 is my most common response now, and I've got a 51 to 45 win rate. D5 favours white, and knight F6 is a very, very kind of typical idea. You can go like lots of different approaches down that way. And also D6. D6 is an interesting one. So this I think would be the... Is that the Black Lion approach? I'm not entirely sure. D6 here, here, I think is the Black Lion. And I actually have a 54% win rate in that one. The bizarre looking F6, I have played 3 times and won 2, so that doesn't really count. But yeah, it's doing okay here. So here, what do we find? What do we find? It's good to go over your history and look at it. Okay, D takes is the most common, and I actually win 53% of the time from there. D5 is the second most common, and as we've seen, that's not great, and that's evens at 49 each. But I've got a pretty good result here. C4 is actually white's C4 and C3 white's best responses here. So most common D takes E5, and then I'm pushing D6 and with a 55% win rate. Not to be sniffed at. And here you can see E takes D6, by far the most common, and I'm winning 61% of the time. Let's go through the most classic. Bishop always takes. It's going to be knight F3. Yeah, I play knight C6. Yeah, then probably E3 or E4. Okay, knight C3 is actually common. Okay. And in response to that, I come out and hit the knight. Now we get E3. Because they really want to get this bishop out. They really want to get castled, okay? So I'll play knight F6 here, because I need to counter this knight in case it wants to come in here, for example, because my queen wants to go to E7. They play bishop E2. I'll play queen E7 now. There we go. And I'm winning 62% from here. Now, if they castle, then it's long castles from black, right? 11 games, guys, in this exact position. 11 games. Okay, and now, most common moves, bishop E2, bishop D2, all right? So bishop D2 is obviously blocking the queen's, the rook's discovery on the queen if we capture on H2 with check. But we play on from there, and yeah, this is really interesting. So the first like 8 moves, I've had this exact game multiple times, and that's really what I look for. I look for an opening where I get a really, really good advantage. Let me show you as well. Probably my most successful opening at the moment is the Dime gambit against the French defense. Okay, now check out this one, right? So if we go D4, D5 is obviously the standard response. I've seen this 499 times with black having a slight edge. However, that is until I discovered pawn to C4. Now, interestingly, for some reason it's saying I've only played C4 4 times, and I know that's not true because I'm playing it about 4 times a day. So what's going on here? Okay, so here they will take. And I know I've had this position more than this. Okay, they take on D5, you take on D5, okay? Queen attacks, but it's defended, so they're going to bring out... No, this is not true. My game... Oh. Forgive me, guys. I had it still set to black. This is the problem. Okay, let's start again. Let's start again, because I was wondering why. Why does black have an edge on me playing the French defense? Okay, so here we go. Right, this is now me playing with the white pieces, not me playing with the black pieces. I thought... It makes sense. I've only seen the Dime a handful of times with the black pieces because I used to play a lot of French. Okay, so E5, right? The advanced variation. This plays into black's hands, right? E takes D5 is the exchange variation, and this is the honours are split on that one. I've also played a bunch of knight C3, but C4 I'm winning 62% to 31, right? I'm winning 2/3 of the games. C4, and let's again go. We'll go through the most common line. D takes E4, obviously. Why not? And now I push on with D5, winning 73% from here. Most common move, they take. Right? You take. So you've got one attacker, but one defender. So what are they going to do? Of course, knight F6. Adding another one. You defend again, and then they think, well, okay, 11 games, we've had 8 bishop b4s. And it makes perfect sense, right? They want to pin the knight to stop it being a defender of the pawn, because they want to win the pawn, and they want to get the king castled. So what's not to like? They always do this. Okay, and then I've actually managed to lose 3 games in this position, but I've won 8. Okay, and here we have classic fork on these two. And there's a couple of things they can do. If they push c6, you just win the bishop. If they bring the knight out, you just win the knight. Okay, queen d7, you just win the bishop also. So, I mean, it really is still game on. You've got a moderate advantage already at this point. So yeah, this one is just working really, really well for me at the moment as well. So there you go. Didn't think we'd go into any of that stuff, but hope it's been useful and interesting. Thank you for watching. See you soon.